I'm finally ready to talk about my hysterectomy that I had 2 years ago. The reason why I haven't really talked about it publicly beyond just talking about it with friends and family members is one, it was extremely traumatic. The actual surgery itself and the recovery was traumatic. And then just the emotional recovery was traumatic as well. No, it's been hard to talk about. I've been sad. Trigger warning for anybody who struggles with fertility or pregnancy loss, whatever, as I'll be talking about that extensively in this video. I'm going to try and do it quickly because the kids are going to be coming home in about 20 minutes. But on January 13th of 2021, I had my hysterectomy, and I won't go into the history of my endometriosis. Going into that, I think I've already made a video on my YouTube about that. Clip notes. It had 4 ablations with the laparoscopically, and then 1 excision with the Da Vinci robot. And I think that those 5 surgeries, I think, in a lot of ways contributed to the complications that I did have, plus, just general endometriosis. Making the decision to have a hysterectomy was really hard for me because, as most of my friends and family know, I've always wanted to be a mom. I'm not married, never been in a relationship, never had, I'm still virgin, all that. But, I have had all these surgeries to try and preserve my lady bits, so I could have kids eventually. And my last ditch effort for that was the excision. And, I had to pay for that out of pocket. And I don't think I ever got reimbursed by the insurance company because my doctor moved out to a different, he moved to Georgia, I think, to be part of their endometriosis center. And I'm not going to trash him because I think he did a good job with the surgery. I think it was just, at this point, there was just nothing that could be done. I had that done in 2008, and so 3 years later, why did I have this hysterectomy? I think I talked about previously, I was starting to have severe bladder pain and loss of bladder control, and just the pain kept on coming back, and I was on high doses of something called majestrol, and it's would stop the bleeding, but my uterus was just still so thick and spongy. And I had a hysteroscopy, I think, back in like 2019, and they said, well, your uterus is heart-shaped too, which I thought was weird because in no other procedures before that had any doctor said that to me. I was like, wouldn't that be obvious from outside the uterus or inside of the uterus when you were doing your surgeries? I don't know. But apparently with that hysteroscopy, my uterus was heart-shaped. And then my doctor told me, who did the hysterectomy, saying, well, you have a really, really narrow pelvis. And as I was hearing all these things, I was just like, am I ever going to, would it even be a good idea to get pregnant if if that ever did happen? And it was a hard decision for me, but eventually I decided to go through with it just for the sake of both my physical health, because I just, I kept on bleeding like a stuck pig, and I don't know, mental health wise, I don't know, it was kind of a catch-22. I'm like, yeah, I would be getting rid of the pain and anguish that would affect my mental health, but at the same time I'd also have to deal with, not being able to have kids, and that was, and even going up into the surgery, I was just like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. Like, that, and I was kept on, praying to God, is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing to do? Is this the right thing to do? Even up into, going under anesthesia, that was just what was going through my mind. Um, but after the surgery, looking through the operative report, I'm like, it needed to be done. Like, there was just no hope for my poor little insides to ever have a baby. But even though I knew that to be true and the operation confirmed with it, that's still something that was really, really hard to cope with. I'm gonna go through what the operative report says. It's kind of long, but I'm just gonna give the Clip Notes version because this is where some of the medical PTSD came in. So much so that when I was told I needed to have neck surgery, I was just like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it because I had such a traumatic experience with this hysterectomy plus the recovery. What ended up happening. So here's the findings. It says, where'd it go? So first off, they tried to do it laparoscopically because they were like, no, your vaginal canal, your cervix is just way too small. Your what is it called? Your hips are too narrow for us to go up through that way, which would have been the fastest and the easiest recovery. So they're like, okay, we'll just do laparoscopically. But they tried multiple sites, and the adhesions were so bad, and the scar tissue was so bad that they couldn't. So they tried it. I think looking at my abdomen, there's like 3 entry points on the actual belly, and then they tried doing it through the umbilical cord. And finally, when they did it through the umbilical cord, they were able to remove some of the adhesions and get something in there. But that point, I had been under for so long. I was starting to have problems breathing, and my blood pressure was going down. They're like, well, we can't. If we keep on doing this, we're worried about her dying on the table. So we're just gonna do it abdominally, and that's when they do the bikini cut. So they did that, and even then they had struggles because there was just so much scar tissue. So, and I think it took 3 times as long than it should have been, even just going through abdominally, even though that was supposed to be easier. But all the scar tissue, every time they tried to get to a ligament to cut it off, they're there was just so much in the way. Findings beyond just the adhesions. This has happened in the past. I mean, this always happens to me, but the uterus was fixed in place to my abdominal wall. The colon had adhesions. The cul-de-sac was just all messed up. The fallopian tubes had a bunch of adhesions, so did the ovaries, and so much so that the fallopian tubes were blocked, which if you're, trying to have a baby, you kind of need your fallopian tubes open. Let me see, anything else beyond that? But even after they, finally got the uterus out, they decided to do it. They kept my fallopian tubes and my ovaries and my cervix, I believe, because they said that was easy. So they couldn't remove everything because of something about the adhesions made it hard to do. And so there's well, whatever, I'll just leave them there. But even after that, I kept on, every time they tried to stop the bleeding and from where they were cutting into things, I had a hard time stopping bleeding. Finally, they got it under control, but at that point, I lost 800 milliliters of blood. 1,000 milliliters is the typical, um, what they're like, oh, you need a transfusion. So I didn't need a transfusion, but I was pretty close, and I was looking up how much blood loss is usually done during an abdominal hysterectomy, and it's usually only about 200 to 300, so I was, like more than double. Um, what the amount. So when I woke up, I like when you look at pictures of me, I'm like yellow. I'm like the color of parchment. Um, and that was one of the things that made recovery hard, because I had to deal with, I had to take an iron supplement, but I also was taking pain meds, and you have to maintain gut motility, especially after surgeries like that, so they, want you to poop before you leave the hospital, and also, they keep you on laxatives after that, just so nothing, yeah, but with if you don't know this, what's it called? What are they called? Opioids cause constipation. Anyway, so I was taking opioids and iron, so I don't like, thankfully, because I was taking the laxative, it wasn't too much of a struggle. Um, but the pain was super gnarly, and I think part of it was expectation. I had gone in there thinking I would have a laparoscopic procedure, which is something I had had before, so I knew what to expect. But this ended up being, the incision was about like this long. It was like maybe like 6 inches, and so it was a lot. I was in a lot of pain, but also I was supposed to always be walking. She says you have to get your own meals. You have to, like, I wasn't allowed to have help at home just so I wouldn't get blood clots. Hi, puppy. Oh, those kids are home. And they gave me heparin in the hospital. I'm making a video. Hi. These are my brother's kids. Can I watch the TV? Yes. Close the door. You can have some bread. We have some kimchi. Sure. Is that Grandma and Grandpa? Huh? Or is that David? That's David. Okay. Anyway, go figure out a snack and close the door. Anyway, they gave me heparin so I wouldn't get blood clots, because apparently that's a complication of these types of surgeries that they were worried about, especially since I'm slightly overweight. They said if you ever start having chest pain, Pupper, want to go outside with the babies? Okay, go with babies. I thought I had more time. They said if you ever start experiencing chest pain, you need to go to the ER because you might have I guess I guess it would be a pulmonary embolism. So that first month into recovery, it was fine. Like, I was in a lot of pain, and I was also dealing with my mom. Like, I slept a lot, but I was getting my own meals and getting um going up to go to the bathroom, so I was getting, my movement in like I was supposed to, but I don't know what the expectation was with my mom, but she was thinking that I would need to, like, do chores, and I'm back. I'm back. Um, But I think she was thinking that I was like, she's like, you need to walk up and down the street. You need to, be doing chores. You need to be helping out. And I was like, Mom, I just had an organ removed out. I don't know. She was just being really kind of not helpful and supportive. And sometimes when I'd be like, crying because I was in pain, it's like, well, I had a, I had a C-section too, like she was trying to make it all about her. And I was just like, okay, whatever. So back in February, and then in February, I started experiencing chest pain. I'm like, oh crap, I'm dying, I'm dying. So I went to the ER, and I, at that point, I was, I think, on top of the chest pain, I was having a panic attack because I was, thought I was dying. And when they were trying to get the IV in, my hands had, I think I had 2 IVs at the time. And like all the spots that they usually do IVs, they couldn't do, so they had to do it right here. And it hurt so bad, and I was crying. And the lady was like so sympathetic, like, just calm down, I'm like, well, I was having a panic attack, and I'm just like, but they ended up doing I was in the ER for a while too, like, it took them forever to see me. I don't know, maybe they just thought I was being hysterical or whatnot, but they ended up doing the CT scan. Turns out there was no blood clot, but I had pleurisy, which is something that I had before, and because I was under so long, it kind of made sense. I think the surgery ended up being like 8-9 hours, and since they have something down your throat, it irritates it and causes a lot of mucus. And, it irritates your lungs. So I think my lungs were just already irritated to begin with, and I have asthma and allergies, and so I ended up getting pleurisy. And even then, my mom's just like, well, if you had been walking around, you wouldn't have gotten pleurisy, and she was just still being mean to me. I'm like, okay, whatever. So recovery was pretty rough. But even beyond that, I guess it took me about 8 months to like fully recover. And I still have, kind of pain around the incision area, even like kind of 2 years later. And that's probably just endometriosis coming back. Because even though removing the uterus, removes some problems, you still have endometriosis, like, unfortunately, and things can still grow. And I haven't had it checked in a while, but at least I'm not bleeding all the time, so that is not necessarily contributing to adhesions. But since I still have my ovaries and I still have hormones, I think and ovulation and stuff like that, that can contribute, I think, to adhesions and whatnot. So I don't know at this point, but for me emotionally, it's just me trying to deal with not being able to have kids, even though it was something I really wanted. And spiritually, oh, there's my dog. Um, like, I am a member of, the LDS faith, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they have these things called patriarchal blessings, and they kind of, list your talents and, things that are going to happen in your life to kind of give you kind of like a guideline. And I was always talking about, oh, I'll have kids. I mean, it did say I would adopt, which, was something I was fully prepared to do, because I just love kids in general. I don't care if they're related to me or not. I just think kids are adorable and I love them. But it made it like, the patriarchal blessing made it sound like I was going to have kids and adopt. And so the fact that that didn't happen, I don't know, it's a crisis of faith for me. Because even though I have 22 nieces and nephews, 3 live with me right now, about 7 have lived with me in the past, those, so And I'm as the only person who's single, and now that I'm unemployed, it's even easier for me to be the de facto babysitter. Even before, when I was working, I was still babysat and all the time. On Friday, I was at my brother's house taking care of his 5 kids. Back in October, I was taking care of the kids for like 3, 4 days. Like, so I have plenty of opportunities to take care of children and be part of their support system, and so I do get to mother, but at the end of the day they go back to their mom and dad, and I end up being sad. I was at my you know it's like, and that's how it should be. They love their mom and dad, and they love me too. Like, it just makes my heart so happy when they say, like, I love you, Auntie. Oh, you're the best Auntie. Oh, you make such good food, blah blah blah. Like, I do get, positive feedback from them, and I know I'm doing a good job as a mother figure, but at the end of the day, they want their mom and dad, and I don't begrudge them that, but it still kind of hurts. And um and since, I'm more than likely not going to get married because of my autism and all my other disabilities I have, I'm pretty much kind of homebound. Um So the possibility of me finding somebody to even like adopt kids with, I'm like, is that even gonna happen? Um, and part of me not wanting to put myself out there, like, I'm sure that there'd be ways for me to do it, but part of me is, I look at myself and I just don't see myself as someone worthy, like, not worthy of love necessarily, but like, uh, how do I describe this? I see my body both physically and emotionally are just a wreck, and I'm like, who's gonna want to deal with that? And I'm overweight. My body is just riddled with scars. I have all this chronic pain, and I have a hard time dealing with myself 9 times out of 10. And add another person to that, it just terrifies me. I just don't feel like someone would be able to love me. And it's something I've talked about in therapy, but don't really love myself, I guess. Even though I know that having a nice body is not everything, and and I'm a nice person, and I'm a funny person, and I'm an intelligent person. All the things that I could, contribute to a relationship, but because I feel gross and ugly, I don't. I'm like, so I just feel like that's how people see me. Uh, and part of it is just kind of just the messaging that you get from society that if you're overweight, you're not attractive. And then, of course, um, I'm something I've always kind of struggled with, but my mom and dad growing up are like, be more ladylike, be more ladylike. I'm very loud, very opinionated. I am an introvert, I will say that. And I do like my alone time, but if I'm comfortable with someone, like, I'm just like, a little crass, a little undignified, and again, I don't feel like, well, it's I don't feel girly, but at the same time I do. Like, I very strongly identify as a woman, and I like girly things, but at the same time, like, I'm not, the way I act is not stereotypically feminine, I guess you could say. Um and especially since I live in kind of a conservative religious environment where, women, like, like I said, the constant messaging of I need to be ladylike, I need to not be, you know, I just feel like I'm just too much for for people sometimes. It's a little, I don't know if that makes sense. But anyway, that I think contributes a lot to my self-hatred about like not being feeling like I'm worthy of being in a relationship or that anybody would want me. But the thing is, I'm like, I want to feel pretty. Like that's the thing. Like even though I'm not traditionally feminine, I feel like a woman and I want to feel pretty and I want to feel delicate and I want somebody to think that, I'm these things. And I don't know, that's not gonna happen. Um, anyway, I need to go and feed the kids their snacks and get started on dinner. Because, like I said, I still, even though I don't have kids myself, I still do a lot of mothery things. But I don't know, it's just, and sometimes I'm okay with that. I'm like, this is for the best that I don't have kids. I can see why it wouldn't have worked out, but other times I just feel really, really sad and really, really bitter that it's not gonna happen. I think if I didn't have all my nieces and nephews around to take care of, I probably would be way more angry and way more bitter. And so I am extremely, I don't want to, saying all this, I don't want to say I'm not extremely grateful that my brothers and sisters let me be a part of their kids' lives. I am really, really grateful for that. Um, and to be part of my friends' kids' lives, you know. But it does still doesn't mean it's not hard, and that there's some days where I really, really struggle, and I don't know. It's like, why, God, why? You've blessed me in so many other ways and shown me so many other miracles, but this is just kind of the one thing that you can't fix, and that's really hard for me. I guess as they say, it's one of the many crosses I have to bear, and it's not fun. Anyway, I will close with that. If you have any more questions, not that I doubt it, nobody ever responds to these things. I don't know. I mainly do these things for myself, just to kind of get out of the way. Since I'm not in therapy right now, I think I'll start back up again this year with a different therapist. Um, but I don't know. It just helps me to talk about it. And I don't know. Maybe anybody who actually hears this stuff is going through something similar. But anyway, I gotta feed my kids. Bye.